Sydney sold a dream. For decades, it was the city that represented everything Australia promised: opportunity, lifestyle, the harbour, the sense that if you made it here, you had made it somewhere that mattered. But something has shifted. People are leaving. Not the people who failed, the people who succeeded. And where they are going tells you everything about what Sydney has become. The number that changes everything is simple. In Sydney today, a median income household spends more than half of their take-home pay on housing alone. Not on lifestyle, not on savings, on the roof above their head. The median house price sits at approximately $1.4 million, a figure so disconnected from the wages of the people who actually run this city that economists have stopped calling it unaffordable and started calling it structurally broken. Nurses, teachers, police officers, tradespeople, the workforce. A city of 5 million cannot function without are being priced out not just of ownership, but of reasonable proximity to where they work. And at some point, a calculation gets made. A family renting a 3-bedroom house in Western Sydney for $600 a week runs the numbers and discovers that the same money buys ownership in Brisbane, Adelaide, or regional New South Wales. That calculation, being made by hundreds of thousands of people simultaneously, is what a migration wave looks like. Before the headlines catch up, Sydney's traffic is not an inconvenience. It is a tax day invisible, uncapped, and paid in the one currency that cannot be earned back. The average commuter spends approximately 90 minutes in transit every working day. Over a full year, that is more than 3 weeks of waking hours lost to a system that was never built for the population it now serves. What changed the calculation permanently was remote work. When the pandemic proved that a significant portion of Sydney's professional workforce could perform their roles from anywhere, the justification for paying Sydney prices evaporated. These are mid to senior professionals with savings, with choices, and with the financial capacity to act on those choices. When that group starts moving, the city knows. In the early 1980s, a median income Australian could buy a median Sydney home with approximately 3 years of gross salary. Today, that number sits above 30. That shift did not happen because Sydney became 13 times more desirable. It happened because a series of policy decisions, negative gearing, capital gains tax discounts, chronic underinvestment in housing supply, transferred wealth from future buyers to existing owners over 4 decades. The result is a generation of Australians in their 30s who are not struggling because they made bad decisions. They are struggling because the rules changed after the previous generation already crossed the line. Doctors finishing residencies, engineers 5 years into their careers, couples with 2 professional incomes who, by any historical measure of Australian prosperity, should be homeowners and are not. The rate of homeownership among Australians aged 25 to 34 has more than halved since the 80s. That is not a housing statistic. That is a generational verdict. The migration data coming out of New South Wales over the past 4 years tells a story governments are only beginning to process. Queensland received more than 42,000 net internal migrants from New South Wales in a single recent year. This represents the largest sustained internal migration flow between 2 states since the post-war era. South Australia recorded its fastest population growth in 30 years. Perth absorbed a wave of professionals who came for the resources sector and stayed because the city surprised them. The pattern is consistent everywhere. People are not leaving Sydney for a slower life. They are leaving for a comparable or better life at a fraction of the cost. A family selling a median Sydney home and relocating to Brisbane frequently eliminates their mortgage entirely and buys a comparable property outright. That financial transformation happening across tens of thousands of households simultaneously is redistributing wealth from New South Wales to every other state in a way that has no modern precedent. But here is the part the property data does not capture, and it may be the most important part of the story. Cities are not made of buildings. They are made of the communities that inhabit them, the culture those communities create, and the identity that culture produces over generations. Sydney built its identity on a specific social mix, working-class suburbs with strong community ties. Artists finding affordable space in inner-city neighborhoods. Young professionals building careers in a city that felt within reach. That mix is gone. Between 2020 and 2024, Sydney lost more than 90,000 long-term residents, people who had built their lives here, raised children in its schools and contributed to its character for decades. The people leaving now are not giving up on a dream. They are making a clear-eyed assessment that the dream, as Sydney currently offers it, no longer exists. And they are finding, almost universally, that the cities receiving them offer something Sydney stopped offering years ago. The feeling that you belong somewhere, that your presence matters, and that the life you are building has room to grow. Are you one of the people who left? Or are you still holding on? Tell us in the comments where you went and whether it was worth it. If this reflected something you have been thinking about, hit like and subscribe, because this conversation about where Australia is heading is only just getting started.